welcome everybody. My name is Luciano and I'd like to thank you for supporting IoT World Days. I'd like to introduce our panel moderator for today, Sri with Gartner. Sri, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Lucian. Hope you guys can hear me okay. 5G in IoT will improve network speed and reduce latency, which will be a boon for the industrial IoT market. Industry analysts believe that 5G is a technology enabler and an accelerator for IoT market adoption. While the current global 5G IoT market size today is $0.7 billion, it is expected to grow to $6.3 billion by 2025 at a CAGR of 55%. Hi, my name is Sri Chadalavada. I am currently working as managing partner at Gartner Consulting. In my role at Gartner, I work with leading software and service providers in developing go-to-market strategies for emerging markets such as IoT, edge computing, and AIOps. I welcome you to this session, How to Drive Innovation with Industrial IoT and 5G. Let me take this opportunity to introduce our first speaker for the event, Daniel Elizalde. He is Vice President, Head of IoT for North America at Ericsson. Daniel heads the D15 IoT studio at Ericsson in Silicon Valley. He has 20 years of experience in managing the complete lifecycle of IoT products in many industries, including manufacturing, automotive, and renewable energy. I would like Daniel to share 5 best practices to drive innovation with IoT and 5G solutions. Daniel, take it away.
Thank you so much, Sri. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Lucian, for inviting me. Like Sri mentioned, my name is Daniel Elizalde. I lead IoT for North America for Ericsson. And today I'd like to share a couple of the findings that we've had in deploying innovation with IoT and 5G across many types of products and industries. And so can we see the slides? There we go. Okay. So I want to start by talking about the market reality of IoT and 5G. So we know that there's a huge opportunity for IoT. There's a lot of different areas where IoT can provide a lot of value for many industries, many types of applications, many verticals. And we've been hearing that for a while, but the reality is that we're still in the very early stages. Today, about 70% of all IoT deployments die in the pilot stage. And the reason is because there's a lot of factors that the vendors and the customers are not being able to get past in order to move towards a large scale. And so although the opportunity seems to be there, we seem to be stuck in just the very early phases. One of the things that I want to point out, of course, is that the enterprises that are leveraging IoT and 5G, they really don't care about IoT per se, or they really don't care about 5G per se. Right? They're looking for a solution to a problem, a business problem that they have, and how us as vendors implement that solution, it's up to us. Right? And so they really don't care about the specific technology. So one of the things we've seen is, as a market, we've been leading a lot with the value of the technology itself. And it's really not picking up from that perspective, right? And so it's easy to understand why. Next slide. So if we think about the IoT and 5G as tools, they are really capability, and by themselves, they don't add value. Is what we do with them to provide a customer solution what really drives the value. And so if we think about from a very high level perspective, what are the capabilities that we realistically get from IoT and 5G? So in this slide, you can see from the Internet of Things, at a high level, what we get with IoT is we are able to connect physical devices to the virtual world, and we can analyze and control those devices, and therefore the physical environment of our customers in real time. So from a innovation perspective, if you have that capability, what kind of value could you provide to your customer? What kind of problems could you solve for them to address their bottom line? Right? So think about it as a capability. The same is true for 5G. 5G has a lot of technical capabilities and is extremely powerful and valuable. So if we take a step back and what is the capability that it offers? At a very high level, it connects large number of devices and it allows us to move a lot of data very fast with very little latency. So if your customer has business problems that require low latency or that require tremendous amount of data, whether they're doing artificial intelligence at the edge or they're doing vision inspection, etc., then 5G could be a great tool for you to deliver additional value to your customers. Next slide, please. For some reason, I'm not able to advance them here myself. Okay. Now, when I talk about, go ahead.
Go ahead. You should be in command. Just hit enter. Space.
Perfect. So when we think about the, just 1 second here, my computer is acting up. When we think about how we can provide this value for our customers is by providing these end-to-end solutions, because our customers really don't care about putting together all these components. One of the challenges with IoT is the market is very fragmented. As you can see in this diagram, the gray box represents the solution that our customers are expecting to get, right, as a box. And you can see that internally, you have all these components. You have the devices that have the sensors that acquire the data. You might have an on-premise edge controller. You might have the connectivity, the wireless connectivity, and this is where 5G comes into play. You might have some analysis at the network's edge. You might have public cloud. You might have applications on top of that. But all of that together forms a solution from a product perspective. Now, if you think about at the bottom, we have additional things that our customers expect because, like I said, they're looking for the solution of the problem. So they're not going to just take that product and then trying to figure out how do you install it? How do you deploy it? How do you integrate it with the rest of the IT systems and OT systems in their facilities? How do you provision your devices? How do you do the operational activities every day, patches, security, health, monitoring? How do you provide maintenance? And how do you decommission it, right? So all these different things form what is a solution, and that's what we need to put together in order to provide that value. That's why I was very excited to be part of this panel, because we have Hitachi and Bright Wolf together. You know, we all have different parts on this ecosystem, from Ericsson providing the connectivity technology to Hitachi providing multiple aspects, to Bright Wolf as an integration perspective, right? All of that is needed to provide the actual value to our customers. Can I get the next one, please? It's not advancing. Thank you. So I want to take a few moments to talk about best practices for innovation. When we think about how do we actually do this for our customers. And the framework that I like to use is to focus on the desirability, viability, and feasibility framework. What I mean is that when we think about these innovations, we have to look at it from how do we provide value to the customer, and is it desirable? Does the market want it, and does our customer want it? Is it feasible? Can we actually put it together from a technological perspective in a way that makes sense? And is it viable? Can our company profit from it? Can we provide the right value so that we can capture the value? And is it aligned with our own strategy? So we need to think about innovation in those three perspectives. Next, please. So the first lesson learned that I wanna share with you, the best practices, is that when we're as vendors starting to go into IoT and providing this type of solutions, my recommendation is to start with a single use case for a single industry vertical. Because this technology is so robust and it's so flexible, it's very tempting to want to go after everything and want to say, we do this one solution for asset tracking and this one for healthcare and this one for this. But the thing is that in order to provide true value in the full solution, you have to understand deeply your customers' pains, and you have to do that only through repeated products and repeated sales in the same type of vertical, right? So after you have 3, 4, 5, 10 solutions deployed, let's say in manufacturing, you're starting to understand how that works, right? And because your sales, your marketing, your positioning, everything needs to align to that vertical, it's better to start with one, and then from there you can expand, right? As opposed to do it in a horizontal way. Next, please. The next one is to validate your customer's willingness to pay early on. And as you can see on the corner here, this goes strictly into the desirability portion of this framework. Because remember that customers really are looking for a solution to their problem. And the fact that you put together a solution doesn't mean that they are going to want to pay for it. What we're seeing in the market is that these solutions are very expensive to put together and expensive to maintain and deploy. So the pain needs to be big enough that it actually offsets the cost of managing the solution or the cost of the behavioral change that your customer will have to go with this new way of doing things, or the cost of moving away from the current system to this new system, right? So oftentimes we see that the customer says that they have a small pain and vendors put these big solutions, and the customer says, you know what, for that cost, I'd rather just, duplicate my equipment or hire 3 more people, and it's a lot cheaper, right? So make sure that you understand what is the level of that pain, and then validate that often with your customers so that you can have a real desirability for your product. Next, please. One thing that is extremely important is to define your build versus buy versus partner strategy very early on. And this goes towards the feasibility, how you're going to put your solution together. IoT solutions are very complex, and there's no single company that can do the end-to-end solution with services and everything on their own. Many have tried, and it doesn't matter how big the company is, it's really, really hard to do it on your own. So the reality is that these solutions bring together best in breed of each layer of the different technology stacks, like Ericsson from the connectivity or Hitachi from the cloud, system integrators, etc., to put things together to provide an offering. So understanding who are going to be your partners, which portion you want to own as IP, this is your core competency, and which ones you want to either buy from the shelf or co-create with partners, and then figure out how the payment structure is going to go across all the different partners so that the solution makes financial sense. So very, very important to think this very early on. Next, please. This one is understand what it will take to build, sell, and operate your solution at scale with a profit. And as you can see, it touches both on viability and feasibility. And the reality is that deploying 5 devices that connect to the cloud, it's very easy, right? 10, 100, 1,000. But when you start getting into big numbers, or you start deploying in multiple facilities or multiple geographies or worldwide deployments, and how do you deal with maintenance and security risks, etc., all of a sudden, operating the solution at scale becomes a big challenge because companies are not equipped to do that. And so therefore, that's why many companies don't pass the pilot stage, because they don't have the infrastructure, the partner ecosystem, the technology to actually operate at scale. So when you're starting out, don't build, of course, something that is going to go at scale. Start small, but understand what it will take to do that, and what role do you want to play when you go to scale. Are you going to own maintenance worldwide? Are you going to own installation worldwide? Where do you want to play, and how do you bring the ecosystem together? Last slide, please. Thank you. So the last best practice that I want to share with you today is it's important to experiment with business models. Right? And what that means is that we, in the IoT world, we're really starting to understand how we can monetize these types of solutions. And yes, IoT enables the recurring payments and as a service models. And there's a lot of models, but that doesn't mean that that's going to work for you, for your customer, or for your partners. You have to experiment. You have to try out different ways that you can reduce the friction of your customer to purchase your solution, but also to ensure that that creates a comfortable profit margin for you, and there's enough for your partners also to make a profit. Right? So this is something very important. We shouldn't just launch with either the business as usual model that you have, or just pick one from a report that you just read, right? It's very important to experiment. And this is the core of innovation, right? Understanding how you can actually provide this value and what business model is the one that works for you and your company. Next, please. So a couple of takeaways from my talk here. There's a lot of potential for IoT and 5G. They will provide the next technological revolution. But remember, they are tools. They are just capabilities that when you put them together as part of a solution, they will provide the value. The tools alone do not provide any value. So don't lead with technology, lead with solutions that solve a customer's problem, and only then you start getting to scale. And of course, in order to get to scale, don't just offer the components, make sure that you have the whole end-to-end solution together with partners, understand the customer needs, and once you have those validated with the right business model, scalability approach, deployment approach, that's when you will start seeing a lot of the traction. Next, please. To learn more about what we're doing at Ericsson with innovation, I invite you to visit ericsson.com/IoT Studio. And thank you so much for your time, and back to you, Sri.
Thanks a lot, Daniel. So if we go to the next slide. Okay. All right. So Lucian, is John going next or Mark going next?
I have it as John, but if you like, we can go Mark. John, any?
I'm okay either way.
Okay, so let's go with John then. So thanks, Daniel. Thank you very much for your insights. A quick reminder for the audience, I actually typed some of the instructions, and Lucian actually established some of those guidelines, right? Please type up some of your questions in Q&A. The team will be able to answer those questions, and Daniel, of course, will be able to answer some of your questions. And that's really the value of these particular sessions, where you are able to interact with the panelists. Okay, so with that, I think let's go to the next speaker. I just want to take a couple of minutes to introduce the next speaker, John Brinegar. He is the Director, IoT Solutions Development and Delivery at Hitachi Vantara. He has extensive background deploying analytics systems into a variety of manufacturing subverticals, including electronics, pharma, biotech, metals, and automotive. In his current role at Hitachi Vantara, he also led the architecture, development, launch, and delivery of Lumada Manufacturing Insights, a framework for industrial IoT, integration, analytics, and visualization in discrete and process manufacturing markets. I would like John to discuss how you can accelerate your adoption of industrial IoT in manufacturing domain. Take it away, John.
Okay, thanks, Sri. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about accelerating IIoT adoption with a heavy emphasis on manufacturing. Although we have been doing a lot of industrial IoT things in other spaces, our practice has been mostly focused on manufacturing. So next slide. Okay, so you know, what is the lay of the land in the manufacturing world right now? There is a lot of stuff going on. You know, there's a big focus on factories of the future. Whether in Europe they call it Industry 4.0, in the Americas we call it Manufacturing 4.0. But there's a real focus on transformation frameworks, maturity models, things like that, and people are realizing that they need to digitize to stay competitive. The second one is establishing a manufacturing 4.0 culture. This is a key thing that a lot of technology vendors kind of overlook, but it needs to be very collaborative across cross-function within manufacturers. So what we're finding is we need IT and operations to collaborate very closely to be able to do this at this next phase of transformation. And the culture, the people need to buy into it. So that's why it's necessarily collaborative. The other thing that's going on in manufacturing is transformative technologies, including AI, machine learning, a lot of advanced analytics and things. One of the things we're seeing a lot is more and more use of additional sensors and things like video analytics and LiDAR We've seen those kind of technologies used in especially quality use cases. So there are a lot of technologies that are helping in the transformation. Another focus is sustainability, and this is basically increasing efficiency, reducing waste, environmental concerns and things like that. And then last but not least, and foremost in all of our minds right now is what does the new normal mean with respect to the COVID pandemic? And, some of the areas of focus for that are worker safety, compliance, supply chain. And we have been involved in a number of initiatives with manufacturers to do things like monitor social distancing and monitor safety protocols and things like that. These are the kinds of things that we've been doing all along, but we've tailored some of the things we're doing to the new normal around COVID. Okay, next slide. Okay, so what are some of the roadblocks and speed bumps out there? Well, the number one thing is a disconnected environment. So
hey, John.
what?
Hey, John, this is Sri here. A quick reminder, there is a black patch, Lucian, on your screen. So if you can actually remove it, the audience will be able to see the whole screen. Sorry.
Yeah, actually now there are two. Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, I was seeing that too. Thanks, Sri. So the number one roadblock we've seen is disconnected environment, and we've seen everything from pressing machines that are from the 1940s and don't even have PLCs, all the way up to really advanced surface mount technology machines and electronics plants that are very sophisticated, but they're still disconnected. They've got a lot of really good telemetry and data, but they're disconnected. And that leads to the next roadblock, which is the data sitting in silos. So you may have some advanced equipment, and you may be, you may have a lot of data available. You may have a lot of, for instance, inspection data and quality databases and things like that. But it's all sitting in silos, and you can't really do much with it until you bring it together and blend it. The other thing is most IoT vendors lack domain knowledge. So this is underscoring the need to really understand the domain, the operational technology, as well as different architectures for deriving insights via IT technology. So it's important to, when you're looking for a vendor for IoT, that you look for somebody with both operations and OT knowledge, as well as IT infrastructure. And then as a result of all these things, a lot of these projects fail because the OT business drivers, the operations business drivers, are not focused on as much, and architectures and elegant solutions, IT solutions are focused on. So if you start from day one focusing on the ROI on the actual business drivers, then you're going to have much more likelihood of success. Okay, next. Okay, so this is what we call the intelligent manufacturing maturity model. This one's kind of interesting because we've developed this over a number of years and a number of, working with a number of manufacturers, and it's really a maturity model where the first level is just integrating the data into, a single pane of glass operational view. So that's bringing the data silos together to be able to just monitor the data on the shop floor. But then you also want to blend with some of the enterprise data. So MES, ERP, CMMS, ticketing systems, things like that. And so once you do that, then you have a blended data lake of data from which you can do things like predictive quality and predictive maintenance. And one of the things we've seen in terms of analytics is the need to move from scheduled preventative maintenance to more condition-based maintenance to save money. We find a lot of manufacturers are over-maintaining their equipment to keep everything up and running, and they don't need to do it that often, but as long as we can predict when it needs maintenance, then they can use these analytics to do that. Once we get to the predictive level, we also start looking at prescription. So that's like, okay, I have a prediction that this subsystem on this machine is going to fail or is degrading, and it may fail within a week. You know, what do I need to do about it? And that's where we get into guided repair and things like that. And then the last level is we call it customer inclusive and symbiotic. This is basically the full digital thread all the way through. And the goal is to get a full life cycle view of things all the way from PLM systems through manufacturing, and in some cases out into the real world. We have one customer that makes trains, and the digital thread includes, you know, monitoring the operation of those trains once they leave the factory. So that's what customer inclusive and symbiotic is. Next slide. So now that we've defined those levels in the maturity model, we want to take a look at the various solutions and things that can be brought to bear to bring you up that stairway. So these are divided into three main pillars: machine analytics, production process analytics, and quality analytics. And I won't go into details on these, but these specify a lot of the capabilities that you want at each of these levels across machine, process, and quality analytics. Okay, next. Okay, so starting with machine analytics. So what we're really trying to do is just be able to, you know, get awareness of the state of machine and ultimately be able to see the machine health and see if it's degrading and things like that. But the keeping machines up is a key process indicator for increasing throughput on a line, but also reducing downtime, reduces maintenance costs, increases quality, and so on. And in terms of the solution, some of the things that we do there are we can calculate OEE for the machine and show OEE across an entire line or plant. Anomaly detection is also really useful for detecting degradation. Anomaly detection can be done without advanced predictive algorithms. It's just showing you know, anomalies in the behavior of a machine, even when no one sensor exceeds a threshold. And so really the goal of all this is to reduce the time to assess issues, to be able to do data mining, and then do root cause analysis around issues with machines. Okay, next. Okay, so production process analytics is a little bit different. It's all about decreasing lead time in complex processes that may have, you know, one or more flows. It can be ultimately extended into inbound supply chain kinds of things, but the goal is to be able to visualize delays in lead time, especially in discrete manufacturing, and then when those delays are detected, to do root cause analysis around, you know, the 4 M's: man, machine, material, and method, and to drive very quickly to address lead time problems. And this is all with the goal of increasing the throughput of a line without adding additional lines or equipment. Okay, next. And then finally, the third pillar is quality analytics, and this is really all about increasing first pass yield and decreasing scrap and rework, and deriving savings that way. And really what we do here is the goal is to do trending on things like defects, Pareto analysis on defects, taking a look at quality by process. So you may have multiple processes and multiple test steps. We've worked with one automotive parts manufacturer that has a number of testing steps throughout their process, and they want to monitor tolerance stacking across the whole line. So you want to be able to look by process step. As much testing as you have, you want to be able to look at trending on that. And then the last piece is doing root cause analysis on defects as well as predictive quality. And the goal there is to increase the overall quality while you're also increasing the performance of the line. Okay, next. Okay, and then these are just some, I won't go into these in detail, but these are just some of the other themes that we see. And a lot of these, most of these fall into either machine analytics, process analytics, or quality analytics. But really what's important here is to focus on the outcomes. So don't focus on the technology, don't focus on, you know, the architecture, focus on what you're trying to do among these kind of themes, and then bring it all together with the organization, operational improvements, and innovation. Next. And then these are some examples of various companies we've worked with good success stories. So Maple Leaf Foods in Canada, we've worked extensively with them. We have a transformation project going on with them where we're providing them visibility into their entire, it's a meat packing operation, pork. And it's everything from maintaining humane treatment of the animals going into the plant, as well as monitoring every step of the operation. And what was valuable about this, it was more than just collecting data from PLCs and SCADA systems. It was retrofitting sensors. We worked with a partner at Hitachi High Tech, but we also retrofitted LiDAR and video analytics and things to give like a full picture end-to-end view of what they're doing in that plant. Logan Aluminum, another big one, they provide 45% of the aluminum can sheeting, so it's all rolled aluminum for the U.S. market. And they have like 35 use cases in their transformation plan, but a lot of the focus is on quality. So detecting, for instance, telescoping of the aluminum coils, detecting, you know, creating a quality score for coils based on level of scratches and defects and things like that. So we've been gathering data from from multiple lines in their entire plant. Precision Drilling they do contract oil and gas drilling for the big tier 1 oil providers, and they have mobile drilling rigs in Canada and the U.S. And they're also one that wants to minimize what they call the windshield time, sending people out to maintain things on the rigs. So they want to remotely monitor the drilling rigs, as well as move more towards condition-based maintenance. Finally, JR Automation is kind of a cool recent story. You've probably heard about General Motors retrofitting some of their plants at the beginning of the COVID thing in March. They shut their auto plants down, but they wanted to retrofit those plants to make masks. And they make like 50,000 masks per day right now. And that was all done from JR Automation and our Hitachi Group company. So those are examples of some of the interesting success stories we've had. Okay, next. Okay, back to you, Sri.
Thanks, John. Thanks very much for a great presentation. Again, guys, there is a Q&A session. So I'm getting a lot of good questions from the audience. If you're able to add more questions to John's session, that would be appreciated. So with that, let me actually introduce our next speaker, Mark Phillips. Mark Phillips is the Director of Enterprise IoT at Brightwolf. Brightwolf is an industrial IoT solution provider helping Fortune 1000 leaders to accelerate their digital transformation initiatives from prototypes through to production. He has seen up close how industrial IoT has become an organizational change management issue rather than just a technology issue. I would like Mark to share how to take a low-risk approach for smart manufacturing innovation. Back to you, Mark.
Thank you, Sri. I don't think I have control over the slides yet. Oh wait, I do. All right. And there's still a black box on the slide. Lucian, I think that may be a pop up on your machine. Nope, wait, that didn't work. Did you take control back? Okay. All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started and see how this goes. All right, well, thank you for sharing your time and attention during the session. There are a lot of great presentations, and I'm sure you're trying to absorb the parts that are most relevant to your particular business goals and challenges. My name is Mark Phillips. I'm the Director of Enterprise IoT at Brightwolf. Brightwolf is a 10-year-old industrial IoT technology, strategy, and services company. We focus exclusively on industrial IoT with an emphasis on capital equipment makers developing connected product systems. We've worked with companies like Caterpillar, Pentair, and Danaher, and many others at different stages of their digital transformation journey. Today, we're going to talk about the problem of pilot purgatory, where IoT initiatives fail to reach production or create any business value, which is unfortunately is still the most common outcome for digital transformation projects in manufacturing and industrial sectors. Over the years and through hundreds of projects, we've recognized there's some clear patterns, best practices, and pitfalls that make the difference between IoT initiatives that die on the vine and those that go on to create significant revenue and a sustainable competitive advantage. As you know, we live in a changing world, and one of the biggest challenges is that in large part, industrial enterprises have reached the end of the cycle of improvements in physical and analog systems and the ability to scale them further. Even digital methods for improving performance through monitoring individual machines can only move the needle so far. And since both you and your competitors all have access to the same technology components, even if you break ahead briefly from the commodity game, it's only a matter of time until others using the same technology are able to match your features and physical yields. So differentiating your enterprise is no longer about just the quality or price of your products. You're competing against entirely new business models and companies offering solutions that enable them to operate at an entirely different level. Next slide. Oh, can I do it? Lucian, okay. So unfortunately, what got you here will not get you there. Industrial pioneers who've dominated the landscape for over 100 years are finding themselves in a downward spiral amidst more nimble competitors and the kinds of offerings that their commoditized products can't compete with. The good news for these companies is that the same digital technology that newer market players are leveraging to render traditional leaders obsolete can be used by these same leaders far more effectively when integrated successfully into their existing operations. New approaches to innovation and using digital technology to disrupt existing ways of doing business are creating bigger opportunities to serve customers, reduce costs, and increase revenue. So how can businesses safely take advantage of these new technologies and approaches to innovation to move themselves forward? So many of the behavioral and business patterns of Silicon Valley software startups, most notably agile software development, can be applied to industrial operations as well. The notion of rapid iteration to test for value and make quick adjustments based on what you learn is one example. However, there's a problem. The same software innovators who brought us the tools we can use for accelerating industrial transformation originally tied these methodologies to the mantras of move fast and break things, and fail fast, fail often. And while that may be the right way of moving forward for social websites and easily updatable standalone software applications, this is a non-starter for building connected industrial manufacturing solutions. Business and production leaders understand this connection and are justifiably wary of software innovation teams pushing for change. In the case of equipment makers, sales and service teams are operating under existing business plans and incentives that were designed prior to any notion of remote monitoring, predictive maintenance, and automated consumable replenishment. As a result, these teams are often compensated in ways that would be directly threatened by their company's new connected service offerings, especially ones that involve new business models or haven't already been proven to be appealing to customers. The last thing these sales teams want to do is try to explain about some new service or offer with a new cost structure that could jeopardize their regular equipment sales. So as you can see, a major risk to your IoT project is coming from inside the building. An even bigger challenge comes from facility OT teams, who are often incredibly resistant to the digital dreams of IT innovators. And here's why. While the IT engineers are on a mission to change the way the company operates, The operators themselves are committed to meeting the company's existing production goals. For facility managers, maintaining consistent yields is an all-consuming task, easily derailed by changes to the physical, digital, or human environment. Their mission is to sustain. So when IT comes into their world with a vision to disrupt, OT understandably bristles. Next slide. So when IT innovation teams bring a disruptive mindset into the OT world, bad things can happen. Just because you're fast and agile and can breathe air on land doesn't mean you can survive in another environment. This doesn't mean OT is against digital transformation at all. OT leaders are always looking for ways to increase efficiency and further optimize production. Furthermore, they know in many cases the limits of analog improvements have been reached, but they're all too aware of the fail fast and iterate attitude so prevalent in the software world and the havoc this mindset can wreak in their physical environment. This is the primary cause of pilot purgatory. Many digital innovation teams build connected product systems and facility monitoring solutions without sufficiently engaging their customers, both external and internal. It doesn't matter how technologically innovative their system is. Change is scary, and change driven by teams where failure is not only an option, but actually a goal to be repeated as quickly as possible is not going to deliver business results. You're going to need a bigger boat. Next slide. The methodology we've developed at Brightwolf over the last several years for helping industrial enterprises achieve successful digital transformation is called zero-waste engineering. At its core is the understanding that IoT is not primarily a technology problem. You can certainly make it one, but at this point, all the pieces exist for building flexible, secure, and scalable connected systems. Today, it is a people problem and a business strategy problem. It's a relationship challenge and an organizational alignment exercise. It's about discovering value across the entire chain and bringing everyone along for the ride. You're not just building or buying new software, you're becoming a different kind of enterprise with new capabilities to generate a sustainable competitive advantage. Next slide. In the spirit of keeping it simple, zero-waste engineering contains just 4 key principles. Design for learning means each step has a clear and measurable goal, and that goal does not have to be a specific business outcome, especially in the early stages of the initiative. Building a coalition means project leaders must identify upfront who will be impacted, both positively and negatively, and who must contribute for the effort to succeed. Conspire with your customers refers to both internal users and external customers. Anyone you expect to use, and certainly to pay for your solution, should be involved from the very beginning. Finally, aligning effort to value ensures the level of investment remains in line with expected returns, building organizational momentum through smaller, quick wins while you further refine your digital path. Next slide. When you design for learning, you can be honest about the fact that while you have a hypothesis for what kind of impact the system will have on the bottom line, you don't really know if your approach is correct, or even that you've discovered the most important problem to solve. Most corporate stage gates require commitments to specific business results to fund new projects. As a result, innovation teams often allow success criteria to be defined on what is essentially a good guess. In turn, they are obligated to get their theory deployed as a pilot as quickly as possible inside actual manufacturing environments. Thus, the conflict between IT and OT begins while the pilot project languishes or is put to minimal use. Next, lack of engagement inevitably leads to lack of measurable results, or at least not the level committed to by the IT team for the next stage gate. Nobody is winning here. When you design for learning, the stage commitment can be to test and learn what data and team involvement would be necessary to have a positive impact and a realistic level to expect. Often, teams will learn during the pilot process that there's actually a much more critical problem to solve first. However, if they've committed to solving a different problem and not allowed to adjust their course, projects are deemed a failure dampening momentum for additional IoT projects across the organization. Next. Because our goal is to transform the capabilities of the enterprise, not just a product line or plant, it is critical to build a coalition across the organization in the beginning. No technology project can create financial rewards unless there are teams to support, sell, and take advantage of the new opportunities it can generate. I know of one equipment vendor in particular who built themselves an incredible connected system that nobody knows about because by the time the sales organization heard about it, they had already locked down their quota commitments and sales materials for traditional product offerings. For warranty and maintenance teams, unless equipment data is sufficiently integrated with their field service and aftermarket systems, there won't be anybody to act upon the predictions of failure. Worse, opportunities will be lost for tremendous efficiencies and cost savings for service and repair teams through remote monitoring, not to mention huge aftermarket sales opportunities for replacement parts and consumables when driven by well-managed data collection, analytics, reporting, and notifications. Furthermore, you need permission to change incentives and budgetary flow to build a connected product and services business. We've seen cases where even successfully deployed production systems eventually fall apart when all the revenue accrues to the business teams, while engineering is viewed as a cost center to be minimized, eventually strangling the company's ability to properly support and continue to improve their connected customer solutions. Next slide. To conspire with your customers is to discover the problems we're solving ahead of time. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. When your customer feels you know their world and their pain and view you as a potential path to solve their most pressing challenges, they become a more than willing partner to participate in your pilot learning exercises, not to mention becoming the first in line to pay when these services are delivered. Rather than an interchangeable commodity machine vendor, you'll be viewed as an essential operational efficiency partner. Everybody wins. Similarly, internal OT teams are always looking for ways to increase productivity. They just don't trust the types of solutions that come forth from most enterprise innovation labs, especially when they were never asked what they needed most. When you engage in value discovery exercises with your customers, you create a powerful conspiracy for successful transformation. Next slide. The fourth principle of aligning effort to value should be an inevitable consequence of proper execution of the first three principles. When you're designing each step for learning where the value lies, have the input and support across the organization for identifying and taking advantage of these opportunities, and are deeply connected with your customers' daily struggles and goals, you create a clear roadmap for investing wisely in IoT. The result is that your returns remain in line with the level of investment, and it becomes nearly impossible to go too far in the wrong direction without internal teams or customers pointing out any missteps. That's the beauty of zero-waste engineering. Each step along your digital transformation journey is measured and supported by everyone on the field. With a shared vision across the enterprise and value chain, hypotheses are more likely to be correct overall, and more importantly, testing can be achieved without impacting existing operations. When data shows a change in course is necessary, rather than a failure, the coalition and conspiracy understand they are indeed moving forward beyond the pilot phase and on their way towards production. Next slide. Thank you. For more on zero waste engineering or connected system implementation, visit us at brightwolf.com. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for the great presentation. So I think we can actually open up for questions and answers section of this presentation. So maybe the first question, right, for Lucian, maybe we can actually ask all the presenters to be on the camera. Lucian, so one of the questions, this is the top question that everybody had, was how are you going to share the presentations with the team? Can you answer that?
So the presentations would be made available within the next 7 days in PDF format, unless the organization decided not to share them, but that within the next 7 days they will be shared.
Awesome. Thanks, Lucian. So I'll actually ask the audience, this I think is maybe a curveball question, but let's actually start with a question from Estella Lee. What is the best practice to validate customers' willingness to pay and how much they are willing to pay? So I think this is a question for all, I think for all the panelists. I want to see who wants to take this question first.
Sure.
Yes.
I mean, I'd say the number one way is to ask them. And in fact, I mean, again, they are looking for solutions, so, and they're looking for people to help them. And so one thing we've done with our clients who are often, again, the capital equipment providers who are, as they build connectivity and new services into their equipment to sell to, manufacturers on their production lines. One thing we have them do is actually put together a press release of, how they think their that these new connected services, if they build, will benefit their customers, and then they actually go talk to their customers about that. And so, and really, but people, if there's real pain, these customers, they're going to be more than willing to talk to you and tell you what they need. And again, the critical thing there is listen to their problems. They don't necessarily know what the right solution is. That's your job, but they will certainly know their problems.
Thanks, Mark.
Yes. So I'll chime in on this one as well. One of the things that we try to do is as I mentioned, we're totally outcome focused, so we don't worry about technology up front. But what we try to do is build a transformation plan around a set of use cases that are prioritized both in terms of implementation feasibility and cost, as well as business value. So we actually do value engineering to identify what are the low-hanging fruit, where you can get the biggest bang from the buck up front. So that's the best practice we found to work.
Daniel, anything that you want to add?
I would like to add, I think there was another question that was similar about what is the role of design thinking in this whole process. And so I think to John and Mark's points, this is really the core of design thinking and really product management in terms of understanding what is the customer's pain and talking to them. And I think the challenge for a lot of companies that are very technology driven is the lack of skills to know how to have those conversations and what to do with the insights, right? So it's not just like, hey, tell me what you need, right? There's a whole science and discipline behind that for us product practitioners. So I think it's very important to have those skills as part of your team. And then the different angles, right? There's when you're working on let's say that in the case that Mark was talking about, when you're working with a specific customer and understand what the value will be for their deployment, you have that conversation in depth. But if you are a product vendor, then you can't just go with one answer. That's where you have to figure out how do you get answers by talking to a lot of different people, hundreds, even thousands of people, to abstract the pain, synthesize those values, and so you can have something that is repeatable. And there's always a customization portion, right? But that skill set to be able to extract those needs and synthesize them into value that you can provide for your company, and then experiment on those needs and experiment on the business models until you get it right. That's the iteration portion that Mark was mentioning as well. Doesn't have to be, iterate and move fast, break things, but you have to get to that point, right? So I think that one of the core skills that companies need to have is this idea of design thinking and understanding your users, because as both Mark and John mentioned, this is not a technology problem anymore, right? So we can't continue leading with technology discussions because we're going to end up the same place we are right now in 5 years.
So Daniel, what I'm hearing from you is, as you ask the customers for, do they have investments, those kinds of things, use a very disciplined approach. Use design thinking is one of the tools in the arsenal to actually kind of drive a structured conversation. Don't ask the money, very quickly. You really need to uncover the business outcome, the pain point, to be able to have those conversations. And it looks like, Mark, you do a lot of this from a consulting standpoint and a digital transformation standpoint. Anything that you want to add to what Daniel said?
No, I think Daniel nailed it. I mean, again, it's you've got hypotheses and customers are in pain, and you will come up with a theory of, hey, I think this will solve that, And so then you look at what is the smallest thing we can do to test that. And sometimes it's, well, let's collect this data and then do calculations on an Excel spreadsheet, you know, to make sure that if you had that data in an automated fashion and then connected that to other systems and tools, that you'd get the value there. But don't go build the system and then realize, oh, we don't even have the right data. So you kind of take incremental steps, investing, incrementally and verifying the value every step of the way.
So I want to actually
If I
kind of
could
get to, sorry, go ahead, Daniel, you're going to say something.
It's very important, I think, the message that I think that all the panelists here we're sharing. So there is a process of discovery of the customer's pains, and it's a disciplined approach. It's well understood, right? We're not reinventing the wheel. So companies have to have those skills. And in my experience, at least, I would love to hear from John and Mark. A lot of the battle is internal, to convince your own company, your own engineers, your own executives that you actually have to do this, right? That you don't have all the answers within the building, that it's okay to get these conversations. Of course, you have to have the skills to do them, right? But I see that it's a dual challenge, right? Once you get your company agreed that this is a way you want to approach it, then you can actually go do the work, right? But a lot of times that dies with our own executives to say, no, we already know the answer. We just need to spend $50 million on building this gadgety thing. And when it doesn't succeed in the market, it's like, right? So I think that's a dual thing as us as product leaders here and technology leaders, that we need to have that understanding and be ready to make that case within our companies. And that's where it all starts.
So the second question, I want to kind of go to a similar question, but I think it actually kind of shows some of the challenges in driving innovation in IIoT space. How has been your experience when you started implementing IIoT in machine intensive, automatic and semi-automatic industries? So where there is labor intensive industries and where there's less labor intensive industries, the change management seems to be very different and the adoption cycle is going to be very different. Do you guys see any similarities, any patterns that you believe can be actually used, people can actually use as they drive new revenue streams from IIoT implementations? Who wants to take this?
I'll take that one first because that's near and dear to my heart. We've worked with highly automated manufacturers, which there's tons of data and it's fairly easy. And in many cases, they already have things like MQTT brokers, and we just tap into those streams and we're off to the races. But we've also done a lot of work with highly manual, like for instance, we worked with a manufacturer in France that makes farm machinery, and it's a final assembly plant, and so it's mostly manual. So we have to get a little creative there, and so that's where we apply tools to collect process information. So in those cases, it's less about machine analytics because you don't have the data. It's more around production process and optimizing the process and optimizing the steps in the process. And so that's where we can augment with different technologies for, like new HMIs and technologies for tracking serial numbers, for example, through a process, tracking what operators are at what station at what time, and so on and so forth. And then we can optimize manual operations, like manual physical operations, using video analytics and LiDAR. So we've seen the spectrum, and they're very, very different things, but everybody has challenges, but the nature of the challenges is different from highly automated to highly manual processes.
So before I actually ask the other panelists to chime in, what I'm hearing, John, is you're actually saying for more manual industries, start digitizing first. And for more digitized industries, then start automating. AI has a different place and digitization has a different place. And based on the types of industries, you need to lead with different technology stack, if that makes sense.
Exactly, and different use cases, different approaches. Yeah.
Mark, Daniel, anything that you guys want to add?
I'll just, I think, reiterate the point that we were making before, right? It's about understanding what pains are you solving for those particular industries. It's not one size fits all. And I guess it goes back to some of the questions I'm seeing in the comments here about specifically more about 5G. It's like, well, 5G is going to be super fast, low latency, a lot of devices. Does your customer need that, right? Yes, okay, well, there's a lot of things you can do after that in order to provide value, but there might be other types of, like let's say, manual manufacturing that doesn't require that, they're not there yet, or their use cases are not there. But John was mentioning, heavy camera use and vision analytics and AI. Well, those kind of things definitely could use a lot of throughput from data. So that is where 5G could work. But again, it's about understanding the customer and knowing that, like Mark said, we have the tools, we have the technology, and it works. But that hasn't been the problem for the last 10 years, right?
Mark, anything else that you want to add?
Yeah, again, similar to what Daniel and John said. I mean, again, like, it's about the business outcomes and not the coolness of the technology. And so, and there's so many low hanging fruit in almost any, industrial operation, of things that could be automated. Again, and then plenty that shouldn't be, to not get why these pilots get stuck is people like, well, what's the hottest new technology, that we can find? Let's try to put this in. And everyone's like, well, you're going to mess with my operations and I don't see the gain, because you don't understand my world. You don't understand my pain. And so that's what's most important.
Awesome. So no, I think that's a great point, Mark. A lot of what the panelists and what I have seen is start with the customer pain point, be rigorous about uncovering the pain points, and technology is definitely part of the solution. But more importantly, it is the change management that becomes important, uncovering the pain points and where you can actually kind of demonstrate business outcomes in an incremental manner. That's where the design thinking, lean startup kind of principles come in, because what you do not want to put your customer in a difficult spot is for them to make a significant investment without having business outcomes. You're continually validating those hypotheses, but always start with empathy and start with the business process. So that is definitely the vector. But given the theme of what we are discussing, I also want to talk about a question that we got from Vimal about how 5G and IoT are helping each other from a market standpoint. Where do you guys see this marriage? Oftentimes, these are tools. We're not saying that, these tools are going to be applicable everywhere, but what do you guys see as it relates to the synergies that come with IoT and 5G? Are you seeing some of those prototypes? Who wants to start to answer this? Who wants to take this?
I think Daniel should start. I've got a comment, but that's a good one for Daniel, coming from Ericsson.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we are the leaders in 5G technology, and it's really interesting. We have a lot of interesting use cases. In fact, some of our manufacturing facilities are some of the more advanced in the world from that perspective. And we are seeing some interesting things with control of robots, like automated autonomous guided vehicles in the manufacturing floor. The ability of 5G to control that with a much more precision and exchange a lot more data with those robots so they can create their maps and their tracks. We've seen that. We've seen a lot more with predictive maintenance when you have vision systems, because now you can have a lot more of that processing instead of being within premise or within the machine itself. You can actually send it to the cloud or to the telco edge, reducing the cost of those machinery, because now you can actually move all that data extremely fast with 5G. We've also seen, a little bit outside of manufacturing, but with autonomous vehicles, like either connected cars or even in logistics, where you can have completely autonomous vehicles. And because 5G has extremely low latency, you can actually move more of the control out of the vehicles and into the cloud or the edge, and you can actually still have very precise control. Other use cases we've seen is on worker safety, when you can have wearables that detect whether somebody's getting too close to a machine. It could be dangerous. The speed and the almost no latency of 5G actually allows you to respond a lot faster and shut down machines. So again, it's going back to, do you need a lot of devices? Do you need super high data throughput? Do you need latency? That's what 5G provides. And so these are some examples that we're seeing out there. And the Ericsson website, we have a ton others, and happy to discuss more offline if you're interested.
Yeah, and I'll follow on with that. So we actually have been working with Ericsson on exactly this for a couple of years now, and we've worked with various types of manufacturing environments. And what we're seeing is the best application for 5G. Well, there are a couple of situations we've encountered with small to medium-sized manufacturers that don't have a shop floor network, and either a 5G or even an LTE wireless network on their shop floor is the most cost-effective way to get them wired up. That's one. But to Daniel's point, the other two are use cases that require high throughput and low latency. So things like closed loop systems, highly automated plants with a lot of robotics and things like that. But another area where you need higher bandwidth than you can usually get from a typical wired shop floor network is if you're passing a lot of video around. And like I say, we do a lot of video analytics as well. And anytime you need to store and record video, then you need higher throughput. And so that's what 5G gives you.
Mark, any additional thoughts that you want to add?
I mean, I think that covers it. I mean, again, it's not what can we do with this new tool. It's what are we unable to do today. But if we had more speed, more bandwidth, less latency, what would we be able to achieve? And then there's the 5G tool to help you enable that. And I think that's similar to, I saw a question from Ralph Morales around effort to value, and this notion of how good are our clients at connecting their innovation actions to potential business results. And I would say same thing, that's completely reversed. It's you start with what are the business results we want, and then figure out what innovations could enable that, not let's go innovate and then find a business case for it. Like that's
I think, yeah,
okay.
Go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say, that's the kind of thinking that, again, for the people who are doing the work today, to sustain, and then these people come in and go, hey, I'm here to disrupt you, and I don't really understand you, but I've got this cool new tool. That's where things get stuck.
But I think the one thing though, Mark, would you agree that it is the burden of a vendor to demonstrate what the results are? Oftentimes, right, the clients struggle with reimagining the plant floor. So how do you actually kind of, have this conversation? You go in and you say, well, some of your competitors achieved this results. That is usually how you actually start the conversation. But how are you bringing them along? Are there some tactics? Again, we talked about design thinking. Do you see that as a challenge for the clients, as for them to reimagine the world with IIoT? And how can a vendor demonstrate that kind of value? So is that something that you see it a lot? I feel like it's a burden of the vendor to bring some of that value propositions to the client.
Yeah, but again, I think it starts with fully understanding the client's world and pain, and assuming that relationship as a partner relationship of what's fine to helping the client find a path, to a better solution, and that's when then you can bring in the innovation, technology, and the solutions. But at that point, you're addressing it specifically to these business challenges that you're already discussing with them. Again, like if we were able to do X, that would provide an output of Y. And at that point, they've created the pull so that you're not pushing, digital transformation on them. They are pulling solutions that you're able to have that fit the holes that they've already realized.
Any other comments, John, Daniel, that you guys want to add regarding this particular topic? I think we have covered extensively regarding this. Again, the design thinking, we talked about a lot of tool sets. The one struggle that I also believe is the one-stop shop, right? So a lot of vendors, there are so many gaps in the value chain. Maybe that is the reason why this question is being asked is, yes, I know my technology, I know the solution. I have helped another client to do this, but I don't have the change management angle that you talked about, Mark, which is not a technology problem. It's a change management problem, but I do not know how to demonstrate that kind of value. Either as a vendor, you have those capabilities, or you partner with a digital transformation specialist like Brightwolf to be able to demonstrate that, right? If you don't have that kind of end-to-end solution and demonstrate that kind of value, then it is very difficult for a technology provider to say, well, technology providers usually don't specialize in the business process. That is where maybe the collaboration needs to actually happen. So a couple of other questions regarding regarding 5G, there was a specific question about what about the solutions market for digital twins for manufacturing? Yannick actually had this question. It looks like, John, you had already answered that question. Did you already answer that question on? And
Yeah, I answered a few. I don't remember if that was one of them that I answered.
But is there something that you want to touch on, the
Oh.
digital twin concepts within within the manufacturing?
Oh, yeah.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah. So we think of digital twinning. So, when that term first came out several years ago, it was all about, okay, here's a physical piece of equipment and here's this digital twin. Since then, things have evolved, and we've evolved some of these concepts as well. It's not just about twinning equipment. You want to also twin your processes and your product lines as well, to support machine analytics, process analytics, and quality analytics. But in addition, it's important that you do it in a hierarchical way. So in other words, if you have a process flow or a machine, you want to be able to roll up the statistics. Like an example for machine analytics is OEE. You want to look at the OEE for an individual machine, but you want to roll it up to the line level and see how the line is operating as a result of the OEE of the individual machines. So it's statistical aggregation across a hierarchy of these digital twins. So there's a lot more to it than there was like 3 years ago, where it was just, okay, here's a piece of equipment, here's this digital twin. It's evolved into a much more complex view of the world, but it's important that you model things with twins, not just for machines, but production processes and product lines.
Anything else that you guys want to add, Mark and Daniel? Okay. The one thing I want to actually kind of give, we have what, 2 to 3 minutes. I want for the panelists to take a minute and tell the audience what are 1 or 2 key takeaways that they, if they forget everything about this session, what are the 2 things that they will remember that you want them to remember coming out of this session? I want John to go first because Hitachi is the sponsor. So let's actually kind of honor John and let's give John the first answer. Go ahead, John.
Well, I think the key takeaway is something that Mark and Daniel also echoed, and it's probably the key takeaway is it's not about the technology, it's about the outcomes, and it's about deriving the highest value from the outcomes. The other kind of key takeaway was this discussion that we didn't necessarily touch on in our slides, but it was a really good one in the panel discussion, is the notion of how do you figure out how you're going to pay for this stuff. And so the notion of prioritizing things and looking for low-hanging fruit in terms of highest business value. So you've got to quantify the business value, do the value engineering, but then you also have to look at the implementation costs and feasibility and find the biggest bang for the buck. And it's not about trying to boil the ocean and doing a complete transformation all at one time. It's about taking those first steps. So thinking big and starting small is what we call it.
So who wants to go next?
Sure, I'll be quick. Again, just four simple things as you go forward. It's design for learning, build a coalition, conspire with your customers, and align effort to value. That's it.
I like the pitch, Mark. I like it. Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, I think for me, two quick things to reiterate, of course, that it starts with value for the customer. So invest in those skills to learn how to obtain that value. And the other one, it's about specifically 5G from an Ericsson perspective. There were some questions here in the line about how is this play with other networks and why is it going to be so transformative? So the takeaway here is that because 5G is a standard and it's already adopted by all the carriers in the world, and we're going to have as much coverage or more than we have with 4G today. Basically, it's a worldwide standard. So the opportunity is there, right? There's infrastructure is being built today that has these capabilities, and it's going to have worldwide coverage. And so what can you do with that? What can you, if you had more bandwidth and more low latency, and you can have more devices and you have worldwide coverage, what new value could you provide to your customers? And how can you start thinking about that so that you can be ahead of the curve, not from a technology perspective, knowing that that infrastructure will be there, but more about value to your customers?
Awesome, thank you. So with that, I just want to make sure that we all thank the panelists. They spent a lot of time. I have been behind the scenes looking at how many iterations they had gone through with the presentations. So I just want all of the attendees to join me in thanking the panelists for putting a great session together. And thanks, Lucian. You actually worked really hard with this event. Thanks for the opportunity. With that, Lucian, I'll give it back to you.
Thank you all. Thank you for joining this. And I want to take this opportunity to thank again the sponsor and everybody that joined today. Feel free to hang around. There are a number of other sessions going on today, and look forward to see you in future sessions. Have a great rest of the day.